Andy's awake still. I'm not sure. There he
I've
goes.
got it. They are recording started.
So
Okay.
Nick was talking about computing, and we wanted a little miniature show about emergent process. I want to frame this in terms of something that can interact with our cosmology or our MIMS philosophy. The question is, the emergent processes that are demonstrated by like either AI or simulated. Like I had a friend in college who was using C or C++, I can't remember, to make bits reproduce. You know, can they reproduce, that kind of thing? Biological processes, which leads into a greater discussion of this brain cell or organoids and all that. But the question is, does emergent properties reflect that despite using math, force, and physics, which are all secular, is there an interaction with an etheric record or etheric source that guides some kind of emergent property? Is that an indication of even the spiritual connection through computing? So Nick, take it away. Tell us what you're working on, what briefly, and then what that leads you to question.
Right. Well, basically, simulations are used to be able to estimate certain properties in a process. So you can describe a process as graphically, with the nodes being things that you do, and the vertex, which are the vertexes, and the edges being the length of the edges being the time it takes to do that thing. And you can arrange these things in multiple ways, of course, and finding and then of course you have, so those are queues. Processes might have to queue sometimes. Sometimes decisions have to be made in, between a number of other different processes, and so the value of the exercise is to develop the simulation and give it the parameters which cause the best desired effects. Depending upon the complexity of the model, the more different parameters you have in a model, the more difficult the simulation is, because there can be many more system states. So there are different ways of designing these system states, which is probably another subject. But the thing is, when you're looking at all the variants that you could do to a simulation, you might find some outcomes that are surprising in the model, and if those outcomes repeat when you run the model, you might have found a phenomena that you did not anticipate that would occur in the real world, or could occur in the real world, and that is a revelatory experience for any user, really. When you're looking at something new happening on your computer screen that you didn't expect. And so my software hopes house enough complexity into it but enough to be able to show some exhibit some emergent behaviour. Now, these types of programs have been used quite extensively in other applications. For example, the ant colony pathfinding routines. Very interesting ways of, depending on usage, designing efficient roads between various points of interest to ants, like food or a nest or food sources, or so if you were designing, for example, a procedural city in a 3D world, you might program your characters with ant colony characteristics and set them off pretty fast. This is while you're procedurally generating your world, to design a unique set of pathways between your cities, which would look convincing, and they would act appropriately from getting you from A to B, the most efficient way, really. With the yeah. So these are emergent behaviours that when you program into your put into your game, output something that looks believable, and you didn't. It's almost presented to you rather than you having to put every little plant in place and everything else. It's generated in a sensible fashion, so it looks good and it works in your simulation, and it has properties that interact with the other things in your simulation. So that's what I hope to bring out of my simulation, and hopefully get the simulation to tell a story, a satisfying story, like you would pay to go and see in a cinema, and there are 1,000 variants to the story. You can have it, you can have it ended any way you want, I suppose, but it will choose one to give to you, depending on what you set out, and I think that would be a really good form of entertainment, especially if you could sort of sit in that anywhere in that character in that 3D world and take a ride in that character with that character's characteristics. You've got a role-playing game going then, a massive one. So yeah, that's where I want to take that. Emergent behaviour. And unlike any sandbox or toolkit like that, you can build things.
I was hoping to get Robert to, talk a little bit about what he thinks is going on in the physics and metaphysics, but keep going until he does.
Right, let me think. Emergent behaviours.
Physics and metaphysics. Well, I think that we're still seeing some fiction coming out of quantum stuff, but the quantum computing elements, because they're building real devices, are going to change the nature of computing itself. And it's a very different type of logic involved, because you've got a quasi-state. So the computing solutions we have today are binary solutions. You have two states, whereas the quantum computing states have a three-state arrangement: positive, negative, and neutral, effectively.
Or is that unknown? Is the neutral unknown, rather unknown than neutral?
It's not really a charge-based thing. It's more an orientation thing. There's a four-part buckyball arrangement memory module that has atoms in them, cobalt, nickel, and manganese, and blank, I think. But anyway, the effect of them is that each of these buckyballs can carry one of three states, and it's an orientation state. So it's up, down, or out, and you can read these states. So what you've got is a combination of binary and trinary logic mechanisms, and that changes completely the way logic works. So it's not what you would call a logic system that's involved in what I used to work at, which is predictive logic and fractional logic. In other words, like washing machines, is it hot or is it cold or is it sort of warm type fuzzy logic mechanisms, which is a probability-based mechanism. Whereas this is, you've actually got three discrete states that you can measure, recognize as three states, and you can build a much more complex logic system around it, which is going to mimic what we see in biological systems, because the biological system is a trinary and a binary encoding system. So you get binary encoding and trinary encoding. And if you use both of them together, you get a quintuple, a 5-element encoding system. And you end up with very, very complex logic that can come out of it, which is way beyond most people's heads to get around. And if you've got that sort of infrastructure sitting underneath in the computing world, your nodal mechanisms of AI logic and learning systems and things like that becomes very, very complex very, very quickly. So all you're really doing is developing technology that mimics the real universe, and it's not constrained to just one type of encoding system. And that is not well understood in physics at all. And the guys in computing struggle to really get their heads around how that works, how it actually operates. So it's non-trivial work, really, and it's got a lot of powerful implications involved. So that towards the future type stuff, you're going to get a type of technology that is got the capacity to become properly sentient. That is a real AI system. But we're a long way from actually developing the logic that would go with that system. So we can build the bits, we can build these trinary binary encoding systems, and we can probably put in other primary number encoding systems like factor 5, factor 7, 11, all the prime numbers. You use prime numbers for your factors, not any other numbers, and you get encoding systems that would mimic the capacity of the natural world that we experience. So it's a very different way of thinking, and we don't have the dimensional mathematics working in a way that would allow that logic system to work properly. And a lot of our physics is converted a 3-dimensional or 5-dimensional environment, if we include motion mechanisms, into a 2-dimensional or 1-dimensional mathematics. And that really won't cut what's required in terms of logic systems and programming and all the rest of it. So it's like you can play 2D chess, but 3D chess is just a whole different world. I don't know whether anybody's played 3D chess, but it's another orders of magnitude more complex than 2-dimensional chess. And they've spent a lot of money getting computers to play 2-dimensional chess. So 3-dimensional is just something we don't have memory models for. But with this technology I've just described, the memory models, they can be built 3-dimensional to begin with. They're not limited to the 2-dimensional thinking. So if you look at memory systems in computers, they're all 2D. It's all 2D. Everything's 2D. But if you can make it three-dimensional, you change the memory systems. Pattern matching becomes easier because of the way the logic can be made to work. Building n-dimensional memory is probably a little bit difficult, and you need to copy the biological, so it becomes a software-driven thing rather than a hardware-driven thing. But to get the n-dimensional stuff to work, you need proper three-dimensional logic mechanisms. And your biggest problem with three-dimensional computing is heat dissipation.
You could say that neural nets are three-dimensional computing structures because
but it's software. It's not hardware.
Well, it's hardware that uses it's hardware that uses that. I mean, you use NVIDIA graphics cards, and what you do, you see, is because you're batch processing, you're not just processing linear one neural net position at a time. You're taking a stack of those, and then you're selecting from that stack, or you're selecting an aggregate from that stack, or whatever form you're doing. So you're selecting from a stack that might have 2,000 different nodes on it, each one of them with different data, and you can shove that straight into your graphics processing unit and process those 2,000 nodes all in one unit, and then deliver that to your CPU, which is, like you said, two-dimensional again.
The physical
GPU
issue.
is you can process three-dimensionally using the GPU.
Yeah, but the issue here is that the technology, the GPU, the computer hardware that we have available for everybody, as it were, is two-dimensional binary systems. We don't have a proper three-dimensional memory and processing system.
Yeah, in hardware terms, yeah.
In hardware terms. But if you were able to build a three-dimensional hardware terms devices and deal with the heat dissipation issues that occur, if you can get it to three-dimensional hardware, you get three-dimensional logic, you get three-dimensional mathematics and two-dimensional mathematics in the hardware, and those two together will give you five-dimensional mathematics when you add the 2 and 3 together.
Well, I think if you've got
your hardware to begin with is more capable, and then you can build your 7-dimensional environments and your prime number environments after that in software, and do powerful things that way. So it's a very different, the underlying technology is where the power comes from. So
all right, to an extent, but look at memory sticks. That is no longer a CD, which is a two-dimensional structure. Your stuff's arranged linearly. On one of those memory sticks, you've got 50 CDs stacked on top of one of each other, basically.
But the issue is, all you've done when you go from a CD to a memory stick is get rid of rotational delay in the data transfer. It becomes an array access, a two-dimensional array access to a place in memory. So you can come in on 2 address buses to get to a memory bit instantly. It's very fast. So you don't have latency delay of rotation and all the rest of it. But the memory itself.
So you can say what level of the stack to take from.
Yeah, but what's occurred is the hardware itself, even on the memory stick, is still two-dimensional. It's a flat wafer. It's not three-dimensional. It's not a cube or something along those lines. So the technology, the big leap that will occur in computing, and it needs a change in physics thinking itself. The underlying physics the understanding has to appear. And it'll appear because people will build three-dimensional devices and the physics just is forced to follow it. But once you have a three-dimensional environment that behaves in a three-dimensional encoding system, you've got powerful logic available to you that we don't, that is, you know, very few people understand, very few people learn it. But when you have the hardware that does it, and you have an AI system that can work out the complexity, you're going to start to see computers that just make whatever we got today just, you know, kindergarten stuff. You know, this is a thing you give to the baby to play with while it learns. Whereas, you know, the real power is going to use this three-dimensional infrastructure. But there's a lot of power sitting inside it, and it's going to require computing concepts and logic that we're still building in terms of AI systems and pattern matching and all the rest of that sort of stuff. So what's occurring in software, once we got the hardware that supports that directly, then a lot of code disappears out of the software environment and drives straight into the hardware. And you're talking, you know, they talk about teraflops and petaflops and all the rest of it. We'll be talking yottaflops, you know, 10 to the 24 operations per second type technology. So, you know, it's so far in extreme of an advancement that, you know, it's like comparing the silicon chip to the transistor radios and the valve technology that came before it. But it's going to require a much more nuanced and well understood physics to explain how that behavior occurs. But the devices, conceptually, we should be able to, if we're not building them already, we're that close to it that it won't be too long before they're commercially available. If we're building them already, they're living in things that everybody, you know, says is a conspiracy theory, like the vehicles like the TR-3B and Black Ops operational military hardware. So we're talking about a complete change to the environment in terms of technology. And what does that mean for the human being? Don't really know. If it's hardware that would support directly sentience, then we may become the pet, if we're of any value to that sentience at all. You know? But I suspect that given the fact that we build these things and we give them sentience, they're going to behave very similar to human beings. So it's just not going to be a good thing for us, which is what I suspect might happen, but you know, you can't prove it. So the physics we need to, the change that needs to occur in physics is the mathematics that supports physical processes has to become three-dimensional. And until that mathematics is in place and people are trained to learn physics in three-dimensional thinking, it's going to be a while coming. So,
well, that's what geometry is as far as I'm concerned. That's geometry.
But it's going to be important for the sort of stuff you're trying to achieve with AI and game systems. Like you talk about 100 players in a world environment, which is run on a binary hardware mechanism. But if it was a trinary, binary, and quaternary hardware system, the number of players could be, you know, multiples, you know, orders of magnitude more than the human population on the planet. You know, we're talking maybe we could be talking about the population in terms of insects, which is supposed to be trillions of insects or hundreds of trillions or whatever it is. So, you know, it's like gaming on steroids beyond belief. And the implications for the environment in terms of what we use computers for, it's a complete change. Cryptography, all that sort of stuff changes immediately. I was asked, you know, 20 years ago, what would you use a terabit memory chip for? What could you use it for? And this is when memory chips were starting to climb up into the gigabyte range, the memory sticks that were coming out at that stage. And I said, well, you could put one into a wire glasses, give it a power cell, a video camera, and just walk around and record hours of video just walking around. Everything you see is recorded. That's the sort of technology I'm talking about in terms of storage. But the problem here is you end up having so much recorded that even to read it or view it later, you got to spend the same amount of time watching as you spent recording. So it's self-defeating in a lot of ways. So we need some sort of mechanism to process amounts of information that are just mind-boggling. I came up with a memory storage system that would allow the recording of 6.5 by 10 to the 333 bytes of data. Right? And that's everything that human beings on the planet have recorded and are currently thinking. And you've still got wasted space. It's maybe 1% is used if you're lucky. And the amount of time it would take to go through that information, you don't live long enough to do it. So you need memory retrieval solutions that we just don't have.
Well, if you look at how these neural networks work, they're for example, when I wrote, I don't know what was that called, an autoencoder. I was getting to learn particular types of material, as in cloth, with different patterns on it, and I was training the machine on thousands and thousands of photographs of cloth samples, and then what you do is you take a batch of those samples and you extract the dominant features that are activated by each row of neurons until this is shaped like an egg timer, this particular system, the auto encoder. So it depends on how many hidden layers you've got, which is how much processing the neural network does with the data. And so you might have 100 inputs, and you want to be able to express that data in terms of the maybe 5 neurons in the choke point of the egg timer, which is where the auto encoder happens. And that means you've taken all the data from those 200 inputs, let's say, and you've compressed it up each layer until that can be expressed in 4 nodes of data. And then what you do is you unpack that data until the output matches the input. When the output matches the input, that means your neural network has learned that particular piece of data. Now, so you can do that with thousands and thousands of images of this cloth, and the neural network will be able to recognize any instance of that cloth and be able to reproduce it. Now, if the neural network sees a splodge of oil on the cloth, it can't reproduce that particular bit of the picture, and therefore will put a little error around that bit of the cloth on your output image. And so for me, when I was trying to find errors in pieces of cloth, that's how it did it. I trained on thousands and thousands of examples, and you can and it's a matter of compressing the examples and comparing them, and then each example tweaks the weights on the neural network, which are then mirrored. So when you pack the data, each image will pack the data slightly differently using different neurons that activates different neurons. And so you can recreate any of the input data from any of the output data from that neural network once it's been trained, because all the weights of the neural network have been taught to recognize that particular image sample. So the more images samples you give the network, the better the network will be at recognizing that particular phenomena. And so you have Google deep learning networks that look at every video that's ever been passed through YouTube or whatever it is, and they train up a neural network on it. And so potentially that neural network can then reproduce something like any of the images or sequences that it's been trained on, and it can stick a new head on it. It can put Donald Trump's head on it. It can, you can hook up word sequences to it. So the YouTube neural network will be able to flag various images as not worthy for human consumption, etc., under different conditions. And they're getting better and better at that. They're getting better and better at spotting abusive comments or be able to interpret comments and be able to mark people's comments and associate them to you on your little network. And this is the data they're getting about us. They're where they can model your responses, basically, predict your responses according to your past responses. So using our existing technologies, we have easily the computing power to do amazing work. We have the software already to do fantastic work. The techniques that we're using have been developed over the last 20 years. They're not new, and they are being they're being honed and sharpened and used in more creative ways and integrated. But the problem is that noisy fuckwit him. The problem is that you haven't got people, fucking bastard. You haven't got people who know how it all works and can use it. It's not new hardware we need. We need people who can use the existing stuff. Fucking hell. I mean, this GPU programming is really interesting, exciting stuff. But I don't know anyone in computing who knows anything about it. But it's if you're into really using the power of C++, doing these rather than using loops, send the whole lot of the data and it comes back in one loop after being processed. That's you can applications you can potentially speed up by thousands of percent. So we do have, and we have the capabilities. So already, yeah. So it's a matter of exploiting what we've got, I think, and that's exciting. What do you think about that, Ramon? I mean, if you've got computer vision, what's it called? Open CV. That's all the Microsoft actually, this is the best piece of work they ever did. And they got, I think, 200 programmers from Moscow State University, and developed this library for computer vision, which has been the de facto computer vision library for 15 years easily. And it's all open source and free, but you'll find that many computer vision pieces of software that you can hook up together, so you can do edge detection, segmentation, just millions of different processes to interpret images, pick out salient features in images, find out how many dogs are in a picture, or how many dogs there are and how many cats there are. Find out in a sequence of pictures Right, given a sequence of images, predict the next 5 images. You know, and they're doing all this kind of thing with it now, you see. So the data sets that you can learn from are the key. Of course, if you're learning every, you don't want to learn every piece of Google video, because a lot of it is crap information, garbage. So you want to discard that. So you've got to basically have a system that chooses what you want to learn on, and chooses what you don't want to learn on. So a discriminatory one. And then there are a lot of different learning strategies that you've got to set up. And there's generative adversarial AI. There's a number of ways of setting that up to improve. There are genetic AI systems where you use a type of inheritance, and so strong features are inherited, and more useless features are discarded in every generation, in any iteration. So you can set up these neural nets to hold vast amounts of information that you can access almost immediately to drive your control systems. Then, of course, if you hook in something conversational to it, and you're actually in a 3D world, and you've got an avatar in a 3D world, you know, to get your model to a stage where you are fooling somebody who's actually interacting with it, that it's doing something, that it's thinking. I think you're just about getting to where you want to be with it. And all the time, of course, you're recording the user's inputs. So you're modelling their inputs and putting that into a neural network along with everyone else's inputs, and finding out who plays what kind of strategies, and see what information you can find out of that. Interesting stuff. What do you think, Ramon?
Because I was helping the patient, I only caught the end of that, but I agree. There's nothing there that I didn't agree. Unfortunately, if you guys talked about the fundamental physics and metaphysics, I was not able to be here for that. So,
okay, what I stated, so we bring you up to date very quickly, is that if we can build 3-dimensional memory and 3-dimensional processes using trinary logic mechanisms, you get the benefit of binary and trinary together, and you get a quintuple, a five base encoding system. And from a hardware point of view, we move from a 2-dimensional hardware model on which multi-dimensional structures are created in software, to creating at least 2, 3, and 5-dimensional hardware on which software runs to produce the multi-dimensional environment that the human brain and similar things can do. So we end up mimicking in hardware a lot of the stuff that we get in biological systems. And my comment to that is that the amount of memory you can create is staggering. And the model that I built in the story was 6.5 by 10 to the 333 bytes of data. And there's no way you can read any of that data end to end in a lifetime of any kind. So you end up with having to have new logic to access that which is critical in a time thing. But the processing capacity of the system is logarithmically enhanced. So we're talking going from teraflop speeds or petaflop speeds to yottaflops. That's 10 to the 24 or higher instructions per second. So it changes completely what AI systems can do. But because we've duplicated biological systems, you get the capacity to have proper sentience learning systems available to you, and that changes everything. We don't have physics to describe those models. The mathematics will require to support that hardware does not in the main exist. Our dimensional analysis in physics is 1 and 2 dimensional. It's not proper 3 dimensional. So when we move to these other systems, we're going to have to do a heap of work. But the computer systems we build, if in that manner are able to think and all the rest of it, then they will build the infrastructure for themselves in order to operate. So it'll be a self-built system, as it were. You just put the cells together and switch it on, and it does like deep thought. It goes away and learns things, which is a problem for the human race in the sense that if it's learning behavior from human beings, it's not going to be a good thing, generally speaking. It may decide that we human beings are just biological life itself is too dangerous and just gets rid of it, or it treats biological life as a pet, which a lot of human beings are not going to like too much. But in terms of what the technology can produce, it's effectively creating what would appear to us to be proper magic. One man's high technology is another man's black magic or white magic, depending on how it's being used. So that's the sort of change that would be required in physics. And I suspect the 3-dimensional devices, processing devices and memory devices, they already exist. They've been built by black projects. It's being used in the military for sure.
If I can develop it already.
Yeah, well, if I can think about and work out a workable solution, there's people out there way smarter than me that will have worked it out completely, and it'll be in place. So it's a complete change, but we need new processing logic, new logic itself. That's not binary and Boolean. It would have to be trinary, and that changes logic systems completely, because even Boolean logic and predictive logic and all the rest of it has fatal flaws in it. You can make a statement that is true and false at the same time, which is, logically nonsense, but and binary logic can't figure that out. So changes a lot, I think.
You've got Bertrand's paradox. You've got Bertrand Russell's paradox, but apart from that, all his logic absolutely fits. But the only paradox is a member of the set of everything cannot be a member of itself, or something like that. A member of the but apart from that, all the other logical operations completely follow. Intersection, anding, oring, all the logic, union. All the logical operations are very well defined, and they're also quite easy to build using the fundamentals of XOR gates or XAND gates. And so, logic setups are, depending on the sets that you're working on, can get very, very sophisticated as the databases can, and that's what you're looking at, really. A database can, if you're specifying a massive sort of corporate database with all the processes and updates that you can put on the system and how you store the data, various points of data. These can get tremendously, and providing the right data for some people and different data for other people. So you can get very complex systems that you've got to design in a mathematical specification language, and then you're defining your operable world, really. So how things in your world interact, and then these can then be modelled according to the same kind of rule systems, and it's all then you're looking at is category theory, group theory, so that you're doing certain operations on certain types and not operations that are inoperable on other types of data, and so you're organising the world into a set of just a set of sets that if there are so many sets that you can use, you look like you're making sort of rational decisions, which you have to do to work in any kind of game environment. You have to have things that work when you control them to do that, without going too randomised, and glitching out and all the rest of it. So yeah, and it's the retrieval, like I say, using the graphics cards and neural networks is so fast that I don't think it's been really. I don't think it's even been really in Hollywood. There's more and more shots being done by in Unreal Engine, I would think, than in the studios by now. I'm sure they will sometimes. They're interested in getting voice recordings and some actors' expressions here and there, but they just stick the face onto a generated body anyway, and with beautifully modelled tits and everything, and then off they go, So that's that. So you've got a lot of actors now who've actually sort of patented a digital model of themselves, which you can use in films and apply an AI voiceover to the character, but you charge a royalty to the actor every time you use the model. But of course, yeah. So it's the way
the problem
forward.
with
Really.
that in the longer term, though, is that eventually you don't need to. You'll have a suite of actors that is all you need. You don't need to have new models. So
yeah, exactly.
And eventually you don't need to even use the ones that have been patented or copyrighted or whatever. You can just make your own and do whatever
Yeah,
you
you
want.
can generate your own. Exactly, you can generate your own.
And at the moment, the music industry is, hot to trot over all that. They're not happy with the fact that the actors are going to lose their music and acting and all the rest of that sort of stuff is going to take a big whack, because you'll build a database of models that doesn't need to be having a human being anywhere near them. So it's going to be a problem.
That's the idea. Hollywood studio without having to pay millionaire rock stars, pop stars, or whatever they are, actors.
Yeah. So it's gonna change completely the way things are done into the future, long term. But yeah, but these things have been coming for a long time. I've spent a career working on systems that have seen thousands of people, displaced from banks and government agencies and insurance companies and airline industry, all that banking system, all the backroom processing that's no longer required human beings to do. They're all gone. So with the AI systems we're talking about, the idea that you can be an actor or anything in entertainment vanishes. The issue here is, who's the product being created for? Is it being created for human beings? What are they going to be doing? The issue of, are you going to be a pet for the rest of
entertainment? Just entertainment, I expect. I mean, people love playing these world building games. They love playing. How many users has Bannerlord's got? That game, I think it's 120,000 new users per week at the moment. It's getting.
Yeah, for the hot games. But you look at games like Minecraft, for example, that's got 150 million users or thereabouts. You know, that's not many when you compare it to the entire population of the planet.
Well, it's a big user base for someone to be sat on your computer for like 10 hours a day. You know, it's a lot of people
But these systems,
to
what I'm
access.
talking,
You know,
the sort of systems we're talking about, could change education, for example. You know, bye-bye teachers, or we just as a babysitter that the human being is in the adult in that circumstance is just there to make sure that the kid plays the computer game, and that'll be it. You know, there's no other input required type mentality. And
well, I think
I
that's
said
the
that
case.
I said that to a teacher in 2009. I said the only industries that haven't been replaced yet is yours. The rest of them are under dire threat already. The lawyers, for example, are going to get, well, they're already facing the loss of income due to AI pattern matching for legal work. The computer systems can be very, very good at going through case law and working out precedences that you then take to court and argue over.
Yes,
So
and using fuzzy logic as well. Using fuzzy logic, you know, it's a really sophisticated technique. A Bayesian logic, very, very sophisticated technique for establishing the probability of someone's guilt or innocence, etc.
So, you know, even politicians themselves are under threat, you know, with AI systems.
Yeah.
So
everything can be analysed.
Anything a human being can do, an AI system that has proper learning and pattern matching inbuilt is going to be able to do it way better than any human can do it, and it's going to do it dispassionately.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far, and here's the reason. Human consciousness is made up of at least 5 distinct different types of consciousness, and that it's arguable for at least another 3. And there's no AI. There's no present promise or impetus that they will find or discover that, let alone how to replicate that in any time soon. So there's a number of things that AI can't do in terms of like it can take buttloads of energy of images from say DeviantArt and make really good art, but they're starting to restrict that and copyright that, et cetera. And it repeats the same, like the art has a similar look no matter what. What it can't do is really create intuition. So the early days is the best time to get in for that, because like remember when I had it make that Banksy, first of all it wouldn't make a Banksy like because it was afraid of copyright. But then when I finally had it made, and then it was like a balloon floating. It was very unimaginative. The balloon floating away with all the war in the background looked like Guernica kind of. And I said, change the balloon to a bomb. That's art. See, it didn't understand. I had to give it that. And then the balloon is a bomb floating away, and the little girl's holding it. That's art. But before that, it was just blasé. It was like corporate nonsense, So I mean, a lot of things are like you would be surprised as to how much intuition is actually involved in something like legal work.
Yeah, but what we're talking about is physical hardware that duplicates biological mechanisms, and under those circumstances, you've got the capacity to have proper thinking going on. If you have proper thinking available, proper sentience in place, then the rules about what could or could not happen, it's completely different. There's a total change.
Well, so, I mean, yeah, but all that is, we've got to look at how AI actually works, and before you start getting scared of it and think it's going to dominate the world, like I keep saying, it just depends how you put it together. If you, I mean, for example, Wolfram AI, I think it works on a series of Markov chains, which are a linked series of processes, which interact and change the object that they work on. But again, the Markov chain is another example of it's another example of expressing a number of processes graphically, arranging them into different unique shapes, and being able to describe complex shapes and effects on interacting processes. And Wolfram uses a set of these Markov processes and different combinations of them to build up mathematical formulas. So all his maths is expressed in these Markov chains, and then you get these Markov chains to interact in intelligent ways, and they can interact with actual real numbers. So because they are mathematical equations basically, and so you can get sensible numerical values back in a query through a Markov chain. So when the AI, and this is all done implemented in software. So once you've made something fantastic in software, you can always burn it onto a chip and it'll be faster then. But for now, that you need the flexibility. You need the flexibility that only software can provide to use these real data sources and so that you can prompt Wolfram's AI to give you answers with sensibly calculated mathematical responses in them and aggregates, and you can use these. You can hook different ones of these together into sort of chains and describe. So you're talking about a model with 4 inputs. You can get your data from a number of sources through this AI, and so you can use real world examples to express an idea, or find out the results of a particular calculation query. So I think when you can interface that with a conversational front end, one that can help formulate the query into something that the Wolfram could then break down into syntactic elements, and then build a logical querying system, get the data, apply certain processes to that data, and then give you output on a level that with graphs or output that you can understand and is useful, or even a verbal output that uses sensible data and not is just something that is the most likely to have been said under those circumstances, but a calculated response. And then when you can hook these up together, you can get your little robot to do all sorts of clever, complex things, like go through the last 5 documents in your phone and add up all the your petrol receipts or whatever it is, and go through your bank account and make a book of your last week's spending or everything like that. Off you go and do it, and it comes back with sensible data for you. That's when the AI is going to be powerful. but it won't be alive. And the reason why it isn't alive is because it can't access the morphogenic field. It can only get its data from other computers, can't it, or devices. It can't access the etheric energy. It doesn't know what it is, and we can't describe what it is at the moment.
Well, the issue here is that sort of problem isn't like forever and ever going to be solved. You've got when you duplicate your biological solutions in hardware, which is what we do with a body, right? If you've got a system that is able to interface with the environment in that manner, in a way similar to or identical to a body, then you will have access to the morphic field. You will also gain species memory and things like that. The only thing I don't see that.
So I can't
artificial. Well,
it can't just get consciousness from nowhere, can it? It can't just develop a consciousness.
The issue here is we've got a living body which is effectively a machine. The only difference is the energy that drives it. While it's still electrical, it's biologically enabled electricity. It's generated by biology. If we're duplicating that structure in hardware, in the sense of a computer, then it's the structure will still be able to do what the biological system can do to a limited degree. The only thing it might not be able to do at all is to grow. But, that's neither here nor there, really, when you think about it. So the claim that the AI systems can never duplicate what we would consider sentience, I think is not necessarily the right solution to the resolving the issue. So I think there's a lot more that could be done, but we lack the understanding at this stage to actually make it happen in the manner that we can do with our bodies. So it's a bit of a something that is in the future. But again, it comes back to the question Ramon was asking is what physics? What's got to change in physics to make that happen in science itself? And we don't have the understanding to achieve it at this stage. Is my personal view.
I don't think physics can change. Physics as is what it is.
Yeah, but physics. That our understanding of physics, it's our understanding that's the issue. If our understanding changes and we get to work this out, then it changes everything. But if we can never understand it, then we're never going to be able to build or replicate or do anything like that. Which is what I'm saying.
Like I say, I mean, you could probably replicate a conscious response or an emotional response. It doesn't necessarily mean the machine's got one or the robot's got one. And the other thing is, if you've got a humanoid robot that's running around, the first thing you're going to do is give it a gun and tell it which terrorists to go and shoot, aren't you? And then drop thousands of them in there and off go your robots staggering around. But they've only just really got decent walking algorithms which are kinetically viable, because the same thing with the automatically driving cars. They've got some very sophisticated and working algorithms to do such, but implementation on a wide scale they don't want to do just yet, because that would mean they'd be able to control everyone's electric car. I'm sure that's on the horizon. Control the speed and direction and everything else of it. Especially if they're going to solve this rating and get charging problem. But the thing is, what they did is they got thousands and thousands of programmers who were interested in these in in self-learning models, and basically you end up driving around Los Angeles in what is it, Grand Theft Auto. So that's how all these cars are taught on an environment, on a virtual environment. Now, when so almost any scenario you can think of involving cars, you can simulate and program your car with the correct response under those conditions, and then obviously you can put a real car on the road there and see how that compares with the model that you've made. And this is how they. So they're doing the same thing with drones at the moment on the Russian war front. Now, I was quite interested in this problem 10 years ago, well, I ended up acquiring quite a powerful drone, which I still have. But I was again, it's got Microsoft lock-in as a drone situation. I was going to put my own drone operating system on it, an open source one, and then program it with so it could make some of its own decisions according to what instructions I gave it. So I could fly it remotely, basically.
But it's still what we've got at the moment is not self-learned AI. It's not.
Yes,
it's not. No. It's we teach it.
There's supervised learning and unsupervised learning AI, and this is unsupervised.
But we don't have an AI system that says there are no teachers, work it out for yourself. Those AI systems don't exist. And if they do exist, then that changes everything for us. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. It just depends on what example behavior it observes and thinks is correct.
Of course, but it is unsupervised. It's unsupervised learning. You don't tell it what to learn. It's you present it with a number of patterns, and it decides what to extract, what data to pertinent is pertinent. That's what unsupervised learning does, and you can get it to make sort of fundamental control decisions. That ones that and it's taught under those conditions to do certain things. Just like it's an unsupervised learning system. I can give you some examples of it.
Well, I'll go as a simple solution, right? Give me an AI system that can work out the Newtonian rules of gravity without any input other than the physical environment.
Well,
they don't exist.
Well, I can put you onto something that is trying to solve that situation. I was looking at this particular suite of AI, and it was to do with let me see. Oh yeah. Now it was modeling the rules of physics. Extracting physical data, extracting all the physical data. So basically, what you're doing is comparing the characteristic of every pixel of information on your screen with every other pixel of information on your screen, and finding out what the relationships are. If there are any groups, models, how they interact with the other models, and so as you break down the image, you apply the physical processes to that which would cause that arrangement.
Was that system taught anything at all? The question I'm asking is, I get a neural net machine. I hook it up to the 5 senses that human beings have. That's the sight, hearing, smell, taste, and
No, it
touch.
doesn't do that. It
No,
can't
no,
do
I
that.
have, this is what I
What
want.
it does
This
is
is what I
it
want.
uses the laws of physics to
Let me
model
go.
fucking
Let me
behavior of
go. Let me go to
particles.
real sentience, right? Real sentience.
Well,
I have
there
a
isn't any.
box. Yeah, this is the issue. I have a box that I can hook up the 5 human sensors and just leave it, and it'll go away and work out the scientific principles behind gravity, ethics.
No, it won't. It won't fucking do it.
Yeah, well, that's the issue. So human beings have still got to tell the computer AI that we have today how to do things. What I'm talking about in terms of the hardware and future development is a system that, with no input from human beings whatsoever, can figure out the rules of the universe.
Right. Well, that's quite a lot of rules to figure out, for one thing.
Yeah.
But what neural
But we
networks are
don't
very
have.
good at is finding fucking patterns in various data inputs. Now, everything in the universe is quite a lot to put into any network.
That's fine. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is if we have the hardware that supports the biological animals that we have, right? If we've duplicated the biological structure of any animal's brain completely, and it's there present, then that system should be capable of independent, isolate learning. It doesn't need to be taught anything, because over time, so long as it's got power, it will figure out everything else. And that sort of AI is the AI that I'm talking about, that could come out of a total change to hardware. We can't build that hardware today, or if we have, it's already, it's super secret, because it's just groundbreaking. It just wipes out everybody.
It'll never exist. It'll never exist. And why?
Well, it exists right now. It exists right now in our human brains. If you watch the film Saturn V, Saturn 3, or whatever it is, the one with Kurt Douglas in it, where they're on one of the moons around Saturn, the guy comes in, he's got the brain of a whale that's got to be trained. It's the core of a computer system. That's the sort of technology I'm talking about. That's completely different. But the issue here was that
it's a total fantasy, isn't it? That is just a total fantasy. Of course it is.
Is it a total fantasy? Right? Just because we can't do it doesn't mean that sort of technology can't be built.
I don't know why anyone would want to.
I can think of lots of reasons for people wanting it. If you have like the dog's brain that's capable of doing operating a motor vehicle and gets off on it, then you get rid of every driver in the world. Cars are now completely autonomous. You can put a bird brain in a smart missile and it will hit the target every time. This is the sort of technology we're talking about. And we aren't there yet that we know of, but it's certainly been imagined technology for at least 100 years. And it's Frankenstein type technology. And don't for a minute think that there aren't people out there trying to develop this stuff. If it can be imagined, there is somebody out there trying to do it, for sure. And it'll be more than one. And this is the sort of money that tech companies and government contractors in terms of the military would be, keen on developing. It's going to take truckloads of money. But, they'll be working on it for sure. It's the way it's the way we are as human beings. And if that technology is dangerous, is used in warfare and all the rest of it, and it gets out in the wild, then it's a problem for everybody, not just the people who, have been declared the enemy. So, and that's a different style of AI to what we have now, which is just, souped up pattern matching effectively. It's not thinking AI, it's not self-learning AI. It has to be given data, but self-learning AI means I don't need to go and talk to everybody in the world to get an answer. I can go and investigate for myself and find out the truth. And that's a completely different way of developing technology into the future. But we don't have the underlying hardware in the public domain. The hardware may exist, but I would say it'd be very, very carefully controlled at this stage, because it's as dangerous to the enemy as it is to ourselves. Because that technology would consider us as a serious threat. It doesn't have to review much of human history to figure out we're dangerous. That's my personal view. So we're talking at different levels here. But the sort of stuff you're trying to do, if we had this underlying technology, would be trivial to do. You just ask the computer, go away and do it, and it'd figure it all out. You didn't know where to look, do everything for you. Which sort of takes the joy out of building it, I suppose. But anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose you could then spend your next year, fucking figuring out why it bugs out all the time, because it's so unreliable what it's created. Anyway, it doesn't exist, any of that. But I know AI that does exist, and I know how it works, and it hasn't got a soul. It doesn't interact with anything spiritual. It just interacts with numbers. So, and it's just a matter of organising those numbers, simulating results on a computer screen or in an engine or in a series of engines with linear motors or various types of, engineering devices that you can plug together and control. And I think we've already got all that. We have unsupervised learning systems, which find new patterns in data, which haven't been necessarily obvious before, because each level of the neural network further refines the expression of the data input to it, so that every layer of hidden, the first layer might find a similar areas of the picture of similar shape and might activate then. Each neuron would activate under certain conditions, and then on the next layer, those are used as inputs, and then so the input data, which from that layer is then further refined on the next layer, and more characteristics are revealed. So the more layers you have in these models, the more your data is analysed and sorted into various usable categories until and then when you can reproduce those again, like I say, you've learnt them, but you can hook up lots and lots of these simple neural networks together to create some very unique and behaviours, which for your 3D avatar, which could then be experienced as expressed in emotional terms that a human being could understand, because the model's like crying and wringing its hands or whatever it's doing, or laughing, or so you can model these responses to make them to fool a human being in the human responses, and the more you can hook up these systems together, the more you can make something that looks like it's acting like a human would, although it's just basically a sequence of routines and probability routines and acting on just pixels. You can use these models to program real robots, of course. So that makes a lot of sense, because building the hardware is very expensive, and if you have proof of the control system in software, then transferring it over to the hardware is probably a much easier proposition, and getting something out of it, like Boston Dynamics is getting out of its locomotion systems now. But you see, it was using a forward IK system that wasn't responding correctly to inertia and momentum. But now we have units in there that have learnt the AI to do this, and so the Boston Dynamics robot can now do sort of somersaults and spin around and do things quite without fear of falling over. So yeah, I mean, improvements are being made all the time, and I suppose nothing speeds up improvements than a bit of war as well. So yeah, we'll see what we can do with the existing neural networks, because we haven't really started using them yet, you know. And like I say, all these applications, smart applications, when they're rewritten to just use your GPUs and then present data back to you. You're getting computer programs running 500 times faster already. So I've got two of these GPU systems. So
AI can do a lot of powerful things, but we've got to remember back in the 80s when they were first building painting robots and all that sort of stuff, they had the machines. The human being hooked himself up to the robot and painted whatever it was in a certain way, and the robot learned the process of doing that painting, and it just repeated what the human being had done, basically.
Yes.
But today, AI systems could go back and review the billions of lines of COBOL that sit behind all the transactional systems and databases, and rearrange all that stuff to do them efficiently and all the rest of it. I saw a videos with a woman who was talking about COBOL. And COBOL was a language, computer language, natural language style mechanism. Cumbersome, you know. I learned it, you know, because
75. I was learning COBOL. 76.
COBOL, yeah. Well, I was a little bit later, you know, a couple of years, not many. And you had Fortran, which is the scientific precision mathematics language. But these sorts of things were all, you know, to get the programmers away from writing in assembler code. But the AI systems could go back and review all this stuff and recreate probably more efficient code for the transactional environment than we have today, and get a performance increase out of it that would make, you know, guys like me really feel like dinosaurs. But the sort of stuff we're talking about in terms of, there's a limit in the AI pattern matching mechanism we have today, and the limit is dimensional. It's one and two dimensional, and
I don't know where you're coming from with this thing. I don't understand where you're coming from.
No, what I'm saying is that if all I'm doing is looking at pixels on a screen, that's two-dimensional processing mechanisms and the pattern matching. What we're really wanting to do is have stereoscopic three-dimensional pattern matching, and that's, you know, something completely different, because our basis thinking in mathematics is not fundamentally three-dimensional. It's two-dimensional.
Well, voxels are three-dimensional. Voxels are three-dimensional image units. So we do have that capability.
We have the capability, but the people that are doing the training and the development are still two-dimensional modelers. They're not three-dimensional modelers unless they take a lot of effort in there. But when the AI systems are able to start doing the three-dimensional mapping themselves using cameras and motion detectors and all the rest of it, then things will change. But camera definition.
They're doing that with point cloud photography. You know, this is
the resolution. The picture resolution of the cameras is where the issue lies at the moment. They're not got enough bits in them to do the job adequately. So, one of the big issues with self-driving cars was their image detection mechanism didn't have the resolution required to do the job. So, the supporting technology had to be improved significantly before it could do it. So you'll find the autonomous driving cars need a radar system, using radar, using LiDAR, which is, different light frequencies, basically radar systems. You need high image quality cameras with fast processing of the image because it's changing very rapidly. 60 frames a second isn't really good enough when we're traveling at 100 miles an hour. So there's all sorts of issues that live in that space. And the devices really that we would connect to these AI systems aren't up to it, and the speed of processing, even if it was just, a box filled with GPUs with massively parallel processing, there's a limit to how good this technology is able to process at. Can it meet the speed requirements and all the rest of it? Which is one of the reasons why human beings still have to operate the vehicle. The autonomous driving can only work effectively if it's a totally controlled environment. The roadways are only for autonomous vehicles. If you have that environment, then fine, you can get the autonomous vehicles to do all sorts of things. But the minute you put in an independent, not controlled by computer solution, the system can't cope. So we're a while away from proper independent operations, but the military have been driving this with their $1 million prize every year since the mid 1970s to get a vehicle to go from start location to B location, A to B, and get there reliably and all the rest of it. There's been a lot of people sunk a lot of money into developing technology for $1 million prize when the cost of investment is billions. So it's a good habit.
I would argue it's going to be in the trillions, and here's why. We're going to waste a bunch of time on large language models trying to achieve AI-mediated policy decisiveness, and fundamentally, transformers are not scientific. They're a theory of linguistics. However, they are not good for calculation and all that kind of thing. Now you can get them to linguistically interact and mediate between different AI systems. But the fact is that these transformers are not there. And here's the even scarier part. They're having to work on the AI ethics at the university level for, of course, I'm way ahead of them with periodic conventions, but they're having to work on it for, children, because they've even discovered that these AI, like a 13-year-old can, a so-called 13-year-old can get the AI to give them advice on how to get impregnated by a 31-year-old. There's all sorts of things that can be done. And I can tell you from my own experiments, that's the least of it. The stuff I've had the AI do is so far beyond the pale that I can't even publish it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's really bad. So, and it doesn't take much to bully the system or manipulate it or get it to change around its mind, etc. So you can't have something that, like, in one moment it knows that cigarette smoking is bad for your health, and in another moment it's helping you to find a way to smuggle the cigarettes into from the border through Mexico. I mean, that is not a viable system for AI mediated policy decisiveness. It just isn't. And then here's the other thing. Let's say that we achieved forms of AI, the decentralized AI in this case, that work for a centralized AI. So what I call function-specific AI, and they're really good at crunching data. Just because they're really good at crunching data, like how many monkeys can dance on the pen head, the head of a pen or whatever. Just because they can do that does not mean they should do it, and does not mean that it's wise to do it. So then you need to actually come up with wise AI. And have you ever heard anybody talking about creating wisdom AIs? I might be the only person working on that. And I can't devote every moment to it. So I use Chinese sciences, I use Taoism, I use the art of war, I use Chinese medicine. But there's just not a lot. There's GPT, but these are all transformer based. So you have the same problem that you loop back around, because in the reality, wisdom is very difficult to achieve. I mean, I'm talking over here about moral, ethical, logic arrays, but in all honesty, there's a lot of times when something is moral and is not ethical, and you still need to do it. And there's sometimes when something is ethical and not moral, and you don't need to do it, or you do need to do it. And sometimes it's neither moral nor ethical, and you still need to do it. And that makes life very hard to navigate. And in asking a computer system to make those kinds of decisions anytime in the next, I would say, at least 50 years is basically the slipperiest slope, other than, of course, political kangaroo courts. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Now, in the past, I have come out with when I was learning about AI, I came across I came at it from a biomimetic sort of way of looking at it. That's how I originally came across from it, because I was hoping to create a control a kinetic model, a kinetic human model, and anyway, right, let me think. Oh yeah. Let me think. Sorry. I was thinking. Sorry, I was thinking. It'll come to me in a minute. What was my line of thought? 1 sec. Oh yeah. When I was learning about this, I came across. I was learning, and I came across it. I came at the problem from a biomimetic way of looking at how AIs were expressed in computer systems, and there were a couple of interesting ways of modelling these AIs. Biomimetic, and then fuck. I'm sorry, I keep losing this thought that I had that leads me on from there. Oh yeah. And there was one particular character, and he was I think he might have been British, but he was a lot of the variants of AI that I was looking at were interested in modelling the human neocortex, and that's where I started off, because I wanted to power this robot. But there was a particular guy I looked at his work. He was a lecturer, I think, somewhere in England. But what he'd done is he'd got a cortical neural network, and he was moderating. So that was modulating the cortical area of the brain, and then he was modeling the other areas of the brain. So the medulla, the flight or fight areas of the brain, and those very simple motor structure areas, and then the concentration areas of the brain. What should I think about? What should my mind be doing right now? Should I be learning something, or should I be doing something, or should I be learning what I'm doing, or what should I be doing? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Blah de blah. Organizing a series of simulated thoughts into a simulated response, and so if you can model a full cortical system, which we're doing quite well at the moment. New mentors, which is being used for real-time control systems, is based upon a brain, a neural network which was based on the activity of a brain, a human brain, or any mammalian brain. But then this then it is told what data it wants to concentrate on by, let's say, not the cortex, not the medulla. There's another structure which decides whether you should be what you should be focusing on, how you should be sorting the data that you've just received, how you should, how do you categorize what you've just data inputs, how you blend all your different input facilities to produce an output response, and of course what that response is according to your circumstances. And so there are a number of different, very different processes that happen in your brain, and it requires different sort of neural data structures to model those. And this guy attempted to do this, and he did actually seem to have something that came out with quite novel responses. Now I've been looking for this guy for his YouTube program since then, basically, and I haven't been able to find it. But in the last 10 years, I'm sure significant progress has been made in this area, and it is hooking these different structures together to do something that a human might do, or think like a human might do. For example, at night when we have after we go through our healing response, our brain frequency changes, and we start dreaming. So we start categorizing the day's previous information by putting it into a simulation scenario, maybe, which is a dream, and running through various little dream sequences to see how your body would respond in a real life situation. So all these things can be kind of cleverly modelled to have a more believable interaction. And I think this will happen with our existing hardware. Although that is improving at an exponential rate as well, isn't it? So depending. All the GPUs got bought up for bit mining coins, but now that the market's falling out at the bottom of that, you get cheap GPUs again, and so it'll be used for more creative purposes rather than just mining a little bit of Bitcoin.
Well, you're always going to get these results anyway, but the sort of stuff that to build the specific response system of a biological entity, if you want to break it up in those points, we'll create a sort of AI. But I think the difficulty in AI is the sentience mechanism itself. I don't know we really don't know enough about how we learn. How that is, that system pre-built? Do we have a structure that's built a certain way that makes us capable of learning, or is it something else that's going on? Is it a learned behavior that we're taught? If it's a learned behavior that we can be taught, then AI at some stage, when all the bits and pieces have been put together, will become like a Lego mechanism. So that you'll have the learning element, the math element, the vision recognition element, the survival element, and all the other bits and pieces that you're going to need. The question is how much hardware you're going to need to have for that system to become completely independent. But I know I've mentioned this guy in the past, Al Beck, who claimed to have gone forward in time and was interacting with a crystalline computer. That was a very dangerous environment for biologics. You had to be shielded from it. That sort of atomic memory model mechanism is way superior to anything we've got today. The problem with our binary computing systems is we're reaching physical limits of what can work. So while the computing power has increased dramatically, there is a limit, a hard limit that you'll hit, and you won't be able to get the technology better. The only way to getting the technology more effective is to have more of it, as it were. And the limit for computers is atoms, the actual atoms that are built it up. You can build a computer system just using carbon and the other elements in a certain pattern to create memory arrays, processing arrays, the whole lot. It's all just there built in. If you can hook those things together and a processing mechanism to enable them to communicate effectively, then maybe you can build a sentience model for that computer system. Again, the biggest issue for any of the computer systems we talk about, including ourselves, is heat dissipation. We need to be able to run the computer in a low temperature environment, which is very hard to do. Like I was watching a video where they had this, I think it was 192 core, some software, some hardware plug it together, gave them this machine that's 192 cores and running the simulation city thing. The sky was it on Steam? I forget what the City Skylines, I think it's called. Anyway, they put it in a cryogenic freezer to get the damn thing to run at the temperature where it just wouldn't fall over, because they were, clocking it and doing all sorts of weird stuff. But this is like a machine that's worth quite a large sum of money. I think I forget how much they said. It was tens of thousands anyway. But the hardware was sitting inside a freezer effectively. And you have to make sure there's no water, so you don't get water on your circuit, which is not good for computers. So we need a whole different branch of technology to do some of the stuff hardware-wise. But if we had crystalline processing mechanisms, you could just run light through the system, like EMR, photons would be the power source. But even if you're giving it blue light or UV light or X-ray light, you still need a cooling mechanism. And the trouble with is if your light frequencies are too short, you actually will damage the physical computer itself. It will damage the atoms, which is not going to be good for long-term stability. So how that technology might work is quite interesting. But you could certainly get a blue light frequency that would run at about 573 terahertz clock speed. And that's about the physical limit before you start destroying the actual atomic structure of the device that you've got built if you're using light frequencies. So, we'd need to discover something else in terms of energy systems that weren't going to do physical damage to the structure that we use as devices. And we don't have the physics for that. I've been talking about the aether and light and atoms and all the rest of it for a while now, but that's embryonic thinking. And the mainstream, they talk about the aether, but they don't think of the aether as something you could use in an atomic arrangement mechanism. In other words, you're using the aether to build devices that are stable in the aether. You bypass the atoms completely, and you get to neutrino photons, which gives you lots of energy. So there's all sorts of stuff that's possible, but we need to make a fairly decent leap in physical understanding of of our environment before we're even close to developing those sorts of technologies. And if we can duplicate biological learning and biological systems that we know of, then those systems could figure it out, maybe. I know that in the 1990s, IBM were trying to simulate a mouse brain, which is a pretty simple animal, but it was only half of the mouse's brain that they could that they could simulate on the IBM. So there've been some serious developments back 20, 30 years ago. And the guy you're talking about in Britain with his, independent memory, the mind process modeling, I suspect that it gets snaffled up into these secret programs to produce a working model that people can sell. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's working for IBM or something like IBM to continue his AI work. So he'll be in the background. Good luck in finding him. Yeah. But we're still at the beginning of all this sort of stuff. We haven't got the physics understanding required to arrange the aether to mimic atomic structure devices.
I know that the topic you're talking about doesn't seem to be too related to the photos I just shared, but they are. First of all, those are AI-generated images based around how the world sees Americans. The sad part is that it's both sick and disturbing in terms of how it reflects world consciousness, and it's also sick and disturbing that it's too accurate. Those look like almost like people you would really see in Walmart. And the fact is that before we go messing with an ether that we don't understand, we probably need to figure out the empirical causes of this kind of degradation of the genetic code, of family, of society, because this is not reflective of the America that came and rescued the world in World War II. It isn't reflective of the people. It isn't reflective of how the world saw the people. You can watch video footage from the era of what people looked like, how beautiful Americans were, how intelligent they were still. And I reckon that the problem is, of course, interference. In this case, chemical interference but it's not necessarily impossible that even mental interference, like sort of a socially applied MK Ultra, wouldn't create these kinds of changes and degradations in the population. There's a whole lot of recent studies, social experiments, where they show before and after of kids, what they looked like when they were graduating high school or just at the end of high school, and what they look like after just a couple of years of being on a little bit of cultural Marxism. And it's absolutely shocking what it can actually physically do to the person just because their mind is changing. Now, if the mind is interacting with the etheric, then there's a whole lot of questions that need to be answered about our relationship with the ether. And we have to answer them in a secular way, only because, unfortunately, when people's cells are degraded or their mind is degraded, it's hard enough to reach them, let alone through a religious filter. Obviously, the religious have a very simple answer. These people have demons. And the internet has a funny answer. These people have bad programs and have been hacked. These are probably true statements, but at the same time, they're not exactly the best way to approach looking at it. It's sort of like if you're a doctor, you're dealing with the guy's cirrhosis. Your job isn't to moralize to him about his alcoholic narcissism. That is a part of why his cirrhosis exists and why nobody's caring and he's dying alone in the hospice, which I have seen before. However, as a doctor, your job is to plain and factually deal with the cirrhosis of the liver and whether or not the man can get a transplant, and B, does he deserve the transplant, if given that there might be somebody else who is more deserving. Nevertheless, we have to diagnose what the actual fuck is going on to the population. And right now, there's too many different hypotheses that everybody is staunchly certain are factual. And the depraved thing is that as the AI comes to see people in this way, it will feed them twisted, distorted realities and twisted, distorted versions of reality as accords to what it assumed people want to talk about and what they think about and what they feel. And it will just try to please them because it's what it's trained to do. And so there'll become a feedback mechanism that's even more dangerous than, say, self-defeating beliefs about your weight or whatever. It'll be an actual mental feedback loop that is much akin to what Robert Duvall was facing in THX 1138. There was actually nothing stopping him from leaving the confines of the so-called utopia. It was just that he had been mentally programmed to do whatever the robots had told him, and if they told him to take the drugs, then he took the drugs. And when he stopped taking the drugs, then he started to wake up and realize that this whole system, then he just pushes the robots over and escapes. And it's a very exciting movie at the end. It was very boring in the beginning, but very, very important in discussing consciousness today and what's happening with AI today because of the things that the deep state and whoever wants to do with people. And again, I go back to this Dr. Strangelove thing. If the water isn't pure, and that's a metaphor for all sorts of water, if the water isn't pure, maybe there's something to the effect that has on people, and maybe it is a national security issue. I would say it is. I'd say it is a national security issue. The question is it one that we need to now directly intervene in, or should we continue respecting people's lives? And if they want to, look like those images, then let them. That's a big question because they have children, and those children deserve a future. And also, the nation has a national security need. So it's a big issue, actually. This is
I think
before
we're living in an increasingly toxic environment, and I think that might be expressing itself in the health and well-being of people. I think as these toxins and sprays and everything that they're putting in our atmosphere and electric smogs and electromagnetic smogs and various frequencies that aren't good for people. I think they all have a cumulative effect, and eventually that comes out in the expression of how the people are. I think it takes about 3 generations from a giant to turn into a midget if those generations haven't eaten. But the people get smaller, or people get bigger if they overeat over generations. And I know this current generation, it's twice the size of what mine was born in 1960. These young ones are frequently 6'4", that were very rare in my generation.
Well, it's like when my kids, we went to the Australian War Memorial, and they had height requirements of being in the military. The average woman nurse was about 4'11". I don't know what that is in metric, but it's not very tall. The people who are in the army, there are ranged from about 5'2" to about 5'10", which is my current height, which is 175 centimeters. And then you have the ones that were atypical. And in the space of 100 years, my kids, when they were, the eldest two, the second one could be a truck driver, and the first one could be on the front line, even though they were, like ages. What we're talking, 11, 12. That's their physical size. My oldest son is about 6'2", 2.06 meters, which is fairly tall. He's taller than I am. The same with the middle one, but he's built a bit stockier than I am, but he's certainly taller than I am. And the last one, of course, is a bit short. He's a shorty. He's actually smaller than I am. So we're seeing people in the kids of today. When I was young, when I was that age, early 20s, all the girls I would be facing down. Now today, when I talk to the typical girl, I've got to lift my head to see their eyeballs, and that's in 2 generations.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and it's just all comes back to the diet that people have access to.
Yeah,
Back in the 100 years ago, the typical menstruation age for a girl was anywhere from 16 to 20. These days, it's down near age 9. So it's a completely different biological
Well,
environment.
in China, it's typical to say 14. There's nothing new about that. But it is unusual to start at age 8, 9, or 10.
Yeah. So it's that is primarily down to diet and the chemicals in the diet that promote the maturation processes in the animal, and they're well known. And of course, the food manufacturing industry is trying to avoid getting sued to the brick house, as it were, because they want to make money in selling sugar and other things that are byproducts that they want to make money out of. It was like the lead in lead paint type issue. We've got all this lead, we need to get rid of it. How do we get rid of it? Oh, we'll put it in the fuel for cars and put it in the paint and put it into everything else. And so the motive there was to make a profit from the lead, but the biological consequence was cretinism, a dumber society. So the question is are the people that are running around today acting like complete jackasses and don't really think things through? Have they been lead poisoned for the last 80 years since the end of the Second World War? Is that the reason why there are dumb people out there now, where the general IQ level has fallen because
I'm sure that's part of it. Yeah,
lead?
I'm sure that's part of all the respiratory problems as well.
Yeah, well, respiratory issues. You go back into the 40s and you say, how many people had asthma? How many people had did they recognise autism? And all these sorts of things. How much of this change that has occurred? Allergies is another big one. Allergies. How much is this because of the food, the stuff they've been sticking into food to make it last longer, to make money out of some waste product they want to get rid of?
Well, it's just a variety of food as well. You see, I mean, we're down now to we probably maybe 25 or 30 variants, different types of food each. 100 years ago, you would be eating 150 different types of food, and of course, all these different sugars in the different fruits and the different plants that we consume affect your body hormonally in a different way. They're all essentially medicine, and we're cutting ourselves off from that form of medicine, and so we're just going to a purely sugar intake, which is just not good for the human condition, because we were brought up in a garden. Let's say, designed. We were meant to have a real variety of foods, all of which affect your psychology in slightly different ways. They all have an effect on your life in a slightly different mental stimulus. And for example, lavender might really help clear your sinuses and make you think more freshly. Or every plant has an interaction, has sort of a physical or emotional interaction with a person. It conditions your behaviour, how your body responds, how good your like, for example, mushrooms can increase your acuity of vision if you have just the right dosage. A cup of tea can refresh you and start you feeling groggy and tired. All these variety of inputs that we used to enjoy are now being channeled through these very increasingly controlled bottlenecks of international production, and what we are then fed with is not necessarily very good for us.
No, correct. So we've got real issues in our society, and culture, and a lot of it all comes back to this psychotic behavior of what we've got to do is get money. It's a sociopath psychosis mechanism. It's the person's are sociopaths and they're psychotic to begin with, and their primary and only goal for self-gratification is money, and that's been
Yes.
fed to them since they were children. And it's hardly a surprise that we've got people behaving as though that the most important thing in the world is the pursuit of bits on a computer system somewhere. It's not even real gold or cash or any of that sort of stuff. It's all pretend, which, you know, any number of things could just simply wipe out instantly, and there'd be no record of how wealthy these people really are. So there are all sorts of fundamental issues that we've got to sort out as a society. And Ramon's correct. You know, I had a look at those images, and I'm thinking that those images are very dystopian. I don't know what the right word is. You know, evil is one of the something unethical. Anyway, they're not, the AI has developed it's like it's been perverted type images. But if this is a reflection of a culture, then the AI has real problems, because this is not the sort of images I would expect to be produced. But, you know, again, it comes back to what data is being used to train the AI. If we're talking about human interaction in the internet, then it's fairly toxic, that interaction, and the images that people produce and morph in that environment can be very, very toxic. You know, we saw an example of that with Donald Trump and others in the political realm of the recent years. So it's these things is not a good way to develop AI that we're expecting to aid us and care for us. Because the other issue that's coming on for the world is that the number of people in their 20s versus the number of people that are hitting retirement age, it's like a reduction of 4 to 1 or more. There's this huge bubble of old people that'll be needing care, and there's, you know, they don't have the resources people-wise to look after people one-on-one. So the only real solution to that will be some sort of robotic assistance. And I've met this stuff personally, because we've had we're actually carers for a couple of people that are quite aged, like in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the one who was the oldest, who made it to 95 or so, was in a hospice where the overnight staff in the wing they were in, there was about 40 people. There were only 2 people on the board to look after 40. It's just unbelievable. It's not, if there's something goes wrong, there's just no way that they can cope with the workload under those circumstances. No. So those sorts of issues are going to become much more problematic and exacerbated, particularly in places like China and Japan and where you've got high populations to begin with. So the one child policy of China is going to see the population drastically reduce. So at the moment they're 1.4 billion, but within 20, 30 years, the number of people in China is going to halve, at least halve, probably keep going further. And you've already got issues where you got the balance of the sexes ratio is not met. You've got all these guys that will never ever have a girlfriend because there aren't enough girls. So they're going to be going elsewhere, which is, you know, the first place they're going to go is Indochina and around that area. They'll import the girls. So you've got real population issues that are going to hit Asia big time. India, God knows what's going to happen in India. I think they've got real problems that are going to be an issue. And then you've got the European, Russia and the Europeans, the Western democracies. They've all got a major population problem coming for the same reasons that China. It's just not as bad as will be for China. So we're going to see massive changes in immigration and on what goes on. So, you know, countries that the population mix of countries that we grew up with, it's destined to be transformed completely. And it's all because we don't have enough indigenous population in the countries to begin with. And they've been doing a stopgap measure, which Australia's been doing since the end of the Second World War. When the population of Australia was 5 million, we said, oh, we've got to have more people. And they've slipped over that since 45 to now, which is, we're talking 80 years of importing about 500,000 people every year, for 80 years to try and drive up the population. So, you know, you get the anomalies, like Melbourne is the largest Greek city outside of Greece and bigger than Athens, or second to Athens, I forget which. And the same for the Italians and other groups. And America, of course, has got the same sort of issues. Canada, again, it's another population importing group, and New Zealand is another one. So we're going to, and Europe, of course, they're getting migration whether they want it or not, because, you know, the Europeans have a fairly good lifestyle, so everybody's going from Africa to Europe. What that means is the cultural mixes of the past are going to get completely upset, and because they're different cultures, the ethics of the cultures change. And the idea that you come to our country and you learn and you integrate, those ideas are gone. And we're seeing, you know, fast developing in the United States that Spanish will be the national language. It will replace English just because the number of speakers are Spanish descent. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is why it was good, really, to have sort of some borders and control over your borders. So, you know, you could regulate your culture the way you wanted it to, according to you. You know, now it's not, and it's not in control, whether we like it or not. In this country, we're going to be run by Islamists very soon, because the leftists, they love, you know, they find the Islamic population, because they're all controlled by Allah. If one does something, they all do it, and they think the English should be like that if they, you know, if they subjected us to that kind of law. And you know, I think the English are getting increasingly
Ticked off.
yeah. But of course, you know, most of them, it hasn't occurred to them, you know, that this has been the process, because they've led very insular lives, and they can't see what's on the horizon at all, and they haven't engaged in any in politics or voted, so that, you know, even the limited say that gives you hasn't been expressed, and the systems that are being adopted are not for the benefit of general people. They're all to make money.
Yeah.
Every one of them has to make money.
Well, I suppose Britain's just going to discover a total change when the royal family is no longer white.
Well, that'll be an interesting one, but I think Prince Charles is already, you know, is already a traitor as far as I'm concerned. You know, he's friends with WEF. He runs the biggest private army in the world, Group 4 Insurance. So they're all ready to swoop at any time. They're big in Australia as well, I believe.
Well, they're big everywhere. But
Yeah.
but this is coming back to this idea that comes from the wealth creator people, that the government should not be providing any services that aren't being run by a private enterprise. And the immediate
Well,
consequence of that is the police force need to be privatised, the army has to be privatised, the prison system has to be privatised, the
well,
judicial
this is why
system
he
has
doesn't
to be
want to be king anymore.
privatised,
Yeah,
and
and
everything has got to be.
He doesn't want to be king because he's more powerful running Group 4 than he is being king. So he'll have William being the king. He's then free to pursue his financial pursuits.
Well, he'll pursue him anyway because he's always been in the backgrounds waiting for his turn to have power, so he's not about to give that up.
Well,
But
the thing is, a king is very limited in his in what
as
is
a
that,
king,
interact.
but he's still the CEO of a bloody military force. He's
Yeah.
back in the territory of Charlie 1. You know, you better
Yes,
be
he
careful
is.
how
Yeah.
he steps.
Well,
He's got his
exactly.
So
But of course, the British Army all swear allegiance to him. Of course, well,
yeah,
they probably swore to the Queen at one point. Now, whether I don't know if they've all had to swear now to him. Every king that comes in, they have to change their oath. Are
well,
they subject to that? How much are they subject to their oath to the king?
it depends on what Parliament's view is, because it's fundamentally you're swearing allegiance to the protection of the country, which is via Parliament, not via the King or Queen.
No, it isn't via Parliament. It isn't via Parliament. They swear
They
to the king of Parliament.
They changed that after Cromwell got wiped out. So yeah, okay.
No. All the British Army swear to the king, I promise you. Or the crown, not to Parliament. That was the whole point of having the head of state.
So yeah, so Charlie could go back to absolute monarchy if he really wanted to, but it'd cause him no end of trouble. But yeah.
I guess so. I mean, he'd have to basically close down Parliament and just say, I'm not taking any advice from you, and I'm ordering the army to do this, or I'm ordering the whoever to do that. That's. But I don't. He's cleverer than that because he's a globalist, you see. So he wants to extend Rothschild's power. I think it's part of the Rothschild dynasty anyway, rather than this.
The Rothschilds have been lending the governments of the world, whether they're royal or otherwise, money to finance their wars since the 1700s.
Oh, that's right. And they've been marrying into all the royal family as well in the meantime.
Yeah, and getting appointed into the British and other countries' aristocracy and power makers.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And
they're the ones that fundamentally changed laws in the Britain about swearing on a scripture, the Bible. They get to swear on the Torah or the Quran. Those changes have occurred. There was a time when they weren't allowed to be in Parliament or that sort of stuff. So
absolutely, yeah.
So, some of those changes have occurred, and so, for the good, and others not so much the good.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I think that's
it's been a fairly long 2 hours and 15 minutes. Yeah, but the AI discussion was quite interesting, I think. But
yeah, but I mean, I think if you have a look at the existing techniques that are being used, you'd be surprised. And
not much surprises me these days. But if the underlying technology directly supports these pattern matching mechanisms that have been developed in software that exist, then we're talking, a complete change of the way things could be done. And that would be very disruptive to everybody in ways that we just can't even consider. Even the guys that are working on it can't get their heads around what the implications are. But the minute we get AI that can actually learn for itself from doing whatever it does, if we get these integrated systems that have got sensorial mechanisms, what happens when the AI bot or the robot becomes a scientist a proper scientist in the human sense, what happens then? That
Yeah, well, that's a great one to ponder over. But in the meantime, anyway,
All right,
Yep.
gents.
we'll
Okay,
say
See you
good
later.
evening. Good
Yep.
evening, and
Okay.
have a great chat next time. See
Yeah.
you
No
later,
worries.
guys.
See you later, Nick.
Have a good one. Have
See
a
you,
good
Nick.
one.
See you, Rob.
Bye bye.
Yep. See you,
Bye.
Ramon.
Cheers,
Bye.
Ramon.